All right, hello everyone. Welcome to Sādhana Study. Glad to have you with me today. It is Sunday, June 15th, 2025. And I've got a very watery outfit on today. Lots of blues and whites and ripples. We're gonna do a practice focused on the wave today, the oceanic wave. It is one of the most ancient and widely used metaphors for consciousness. And it has a really beautiful, it provides a really beautiful structure for understanding the prāṇāyāma practices. So we're going to look at that today. And I'm also going to introduce one of my favorite artists. So first, we'll do some self-practice. This is my new Shruti box. Their name is Nada Naga. I'll explain that another time. I'm going to introduce enough new concepts today. So, but it's a little bit more complex of an instrument than lilac is. So this will be fun. I'm just beginning to explore the possibilities here. So we'll have about, I think today we might go a little bit shorter. Let's do 15 minutes of self-practice. Right? And I'll start with just a little chanting. Let's see. Yeah, I'll work with the two Gayatri mantras. The first one, the Gayatri to Ganapati, the organizer of the group. This is protection energy, alignment, organizational energy, a good mantra for the beginning of any undertaking. And the second is the most famous Gayatri, the calling to the radiance of the sunrise and the sunset, which is named in the mantra Savitur. It is sometimes translated as the vivifier. So feel free to listen to the chanting or to begin your movement practice as you're ready. Ganapatigam havamahe. Om Bhurdbhuva Svaha. Ekadantaya vidmahe. Vakratundaya dhimahi. Anudanti prachodayat. Om Bhurdbhuva Svaha. Tat Savitude Varenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Dhiyo yo na prachodayat. And take your time. As you're ready, we'll build a seat. Put as much height underneath the hips as you need to sit comfortably. That might mean sitting in a chair. If you're sitting on the floor, just make sure there's some cushioning underneath the legs. Give the ankles and the shins some cushioning, in addition to some higher height underneath the hips. So if you're unsure, better to err, I think, on the side of sitting a little bit higher. Let's begin with the words of Agnes Martin. Thank you for being with us tonight. Brilliant Agnes. Agnes Martin was primarily known as a painter. She died, I believe, in 2004, and she was born in 1912. So she had a really lovely, long life, and during that life, she created an extraordinary body of work, primarily known for its very subtle abstraction. Her primary body of work consists of square canvases with hand-drawn grids, hand-painted grids, but always working in this kind of rectangular way. And often the paintings are like white on white with just the most subtle gradation of tone. When you get up close, you can see this sort of trembling pencil line. So you're really able to see Agnes's hand in the finished work. When I first encountered it, I was really uninterested. It was just too not there for me. It just felt too empty. And this was during my undergraduate education that I first encountered Agnes Martin. And during that time, I was in Pittsburgh at Carnegie Mellon University, and there was a brilliant professor named Barbara Bernstein. In the unlikely event you ever see this, Barbara, love you, hope you're doing well wherever you are. And Barbara introduced me to this book of writings by Agnes Martin. It's just called Writings. It's pretty expensive to find the hard copy these days, but the PDF of the book is online. And I remember reading what I'm going to read tonight at age 20, probably 19, 20, so 25 years ago. And I remember reading these words and being so struck by the articulation of the wave within them. So this is from a longer poem called The Untroubled Mind, probably written around 1965, 66, so or at least that's when it was published. Who knows how long it was cooking. Well, Agnes knows. So she would have been in her 50s writing these words. All right, so I'm just going to read the whole thing through. I'll try to read them slowly and give them the weight they deserve. The Untroubled Mind, excerpt by Agnes Martin. The idea is independence and solitude. Nothing religious in my retirement. Religion, from my point of view, it's about this grass. The grass enjoyed it when the wind blew. It really enjoyed the wind leaning this way and that. So the grass thought the wind is a great comfort. Besides that, it blows the clouds here which make rain. In fact, we owe all our self-being to the wind. We should tell the wind our gratitude. Perhaps if we fall down and abase ourselves, we can get more. We can avoid suffering. That's religion. Solitude and independence for a free mind. Nothing that happens in your life makes inspiration. When your eyes are open, you see beauty in anything. Blake's right about there's no difference between the whole thing and one thing. Freedom from suffering. Suffering is necessary for freedom from suffering. First, you have to find out about what you're suffering from. My painting is about impotence. We are ineffectual in the big picture. A blade of grass amounts to not very much. Worries fall off you when you can believe that worries fall off you when you can believe that. Pride is in abeyance when you think that. One thing I've got a good grip on is remorse. The whole wave. It applies to life, the wave. As it was in the beginning, there was no division and no separation. Don't look at the stars. Then your mind goes freely, way, way beyond. Look between the rain. The drops are insular. Try to remember before you were born. The conqueror will fight with you if there's no one else around. I am constantly tempted to think that I can help save myself. By looking into my mind, I can see what's there. By bringing thoughts to the surface of my mind, I can watch them dissolve. I can see my ego and see its intentions. I can see that it is the same as all nature. I can see that it is myself and impotent like all nature, impotent in the process of dissolution of ego, of itself. I can see that its main intention is the conquest and destruction of ego, of self, and can only go back and forth in constant battle with itself, repeating itself. It would be an endless battle if it were all up to ego, because it does not destroy and is not destroyed by itself. It is like a wave. It makes itself up, it rushes forward, getting nowhere really. It crashes, withdraws and makes itself up again, pulls itself together with pride, towers with pride, rushes forward into imaginary conquest, crashes in frustration, withdraws with remorse and repentance, pulls itself together with new resolution. individually and collectively the same. Children trained in pride and patriotism, towering in national spirit. Charging in conquest, victory and defeat and frustration, withdrawing and repentance. Then once more, pride, the wheel of life. Pride, conquest, victory, defeat, frustration, remorse, repentance, resolution, pride. So with words like that, I was much better able to empty myself before her paintings. So let's do a little wave practice, and then we'll talk a little bit more. Make sure that the seat is still comfortable. And allow the belly to relax. Allow the bones of the hips to feel rooted. And then allow the force of gravity to root down through those hip bones so the hips feel even heavier. We forget this, but gravity is an active force. It's a movement down, a downward energy. And so when we can really surrender into using that force as though we are using muscles, that surrender allows for a much easier uprightness in the spine. The spine becomes like that blade of grass that is blowing with gratitude in the wind. You can allow the shoulders to begin to sway in that wind. Very gentle swaying of the shoulders, noticing the serpentine articulation of the spine. And then begin to find your balance in not so much stillness, but centering in the midpoint of the posture. As we breathe, you may find that some more serpentine movement comes into the spine naturally. The shoulders might rock, the head might sway a bit. You can allow that to happen. You don't need to force a rigidity into your seat. Now let's tune to the exhalation, the downward release. Notice as you begin to smooth out and lengthen the exhale, that the whole body experiences a kind of release during that release of breath, including the movement of the mind. That if we really allow the exhale its full length, as we arrive at the bottom of the breath, we can more easily feel the quiet of the mind. I'll breathe with you for a few rounds. As the exhalation becomes very grounded, not unlike the grounding of the sit bones, once the exhalation feels like it's really in its power, which is a relaxation power. Then the inhale, naturally, because it is intimately connected with the exhale, naturally the inhale also benefits from that release. The inhale becomes easier. See if you can spread the lower rim of the rib cage as the inhale comes in. Three-dimensional mushrooming of the rib cage. See if you can allow that while also keeping the shoulders relaxed. If it's difficult to untense the shoulders, never a bad idea to just roll them a few times. Get some movement in to help release some of that muscular tension as needed. And so maintaining the release of the exhale, never rushing the exhale. Now we begin to tap into the formation power of the inhale. The word often used in prāṇāyāma is brahmana, which means building. I'll breathe with you, tuning into the building quality of the inhale wave. After this next exhale, let the inhale be natural, no longer cultivating and shaping the inhale. Just let the inhale be as deep or shallow as it prefers. If you're using an ujjayi breathing technique, you can relax that as well. Relax the tongue. See if you can allow the jaw to release. Feel the heads of the shoulders draping down as the neck and the upper back soften. And just noticing the weather of the mind. Whatever you might notice, however you might interpret that, noticing the conditions of the mind. As you're ready, you can blink the eyes open and return to the space around you. I'm going to take a moment. If anybody has any questions about the breathing technique, I'm happy to receive those. All right. I want to share a little bit of biographical information about Agnes Martin. I'm actually not deeply versed in the story of her life, but there are a couple things that I do know that help us really understand the trajectory by which she arrived at these words. Agnes Martin was a person who a psychiatrist would diagnose with schizophrenia. And that's really all I know about that. I know that she had the diagnosis. She is from Canada, and she lived for a long time in the kind of swirl of the New York art world, where she became very well known as a young painter, and at some point relocated to the southwest of the United States. I believe she was in New Mexico for most of that phase of her life. She lived alone. She apparently lived very simply, and she painted all day. And so I think about a poem called The Untroubled Mind by someone who certainly struggled with a greatly troubled mind at times in her life. I also think about the incredible precision and consistency of her visual practice, grid after grid after grid. When she was a younger painter, there were forms, there were representational forms in the paintings, but at some point she made the decision to stay in this realm of just pure geometry. And in her writing, she often seems to be trying to describe, the excerpt that I pulled, it begins with the line, "The idea is independence and solitude." That is Patanjali Yoga Sutra. The word used later in the sutras to talk about the goal of the practices is kaivalya, which is most often translated as independence. So the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali are really focused on cultivating an internal independence that is seen to be the portal into liberation. Often this philosophy is critiqued on those grounds. Hey, we live in this collective relational world. Why would we do this insular practice? I don't think that's a very intelligent critique. First of all, this text is about the mind, working with the mind. We'll do a little test. Charlie, I want you to think of a number between 1 and 100. Let me know when you have the number. The number is 17. Okay, so what I have just proven through science is that I don't have access to Charlie's mind. Okay? So the agency of mental practice is internal. It's internal. What else would the subject be? So from this vantage point, the Yoga Sutras are about purification. Purification of the vessel of consciousness. And Agnes's work, to me, is very much a parallel path. To my knowledge, she never studied Patanjali. Certainly when I read her, I think she must have encountered at least Buddhist philosophy. She was circulating around the same time in the New York art world as people like John Cage. John Cage, the great experimental composer who was a big vocal proponent of deep Zen Buddhist study. So I pulled this excerpt because of this correlation that Agnes makes between the wave, or rather the way that she decides to describe the movement of personality is as a wave. And it was that sense that the personality is something that moves through these cycles of building and crashing and then reforming and building and crashing. At 20 years old, that was describing an aspect of my experience that I did not have language for. I experienced so many movements of building confidence, feeling very centered in my practice, and then feeling exactly what she describes, remorse. Right? What a brave thing to say in this poem when she says, "One thing I've got a good grip on is remorse." So beautiful, a real reclamation of remorse as an emotion, as actually a useful feeling in the cycle, the churning. Right? Because remorse, among other things, allows for the withdrawal back into the self. The breath is not just like a wave, like the personality is a wave, but in a very real way, the breath is the personality. One of the things that we're always working on deconditioning when we study yoga is this body-mind split that is so prevalent in our cultural context. Okay? And it is so immediately obvious when you start working with the breath how interwoven the pattern of the breath and the movement of the mind really are. In some ways, this is why knowing this, having this embodied understanding, it can be a little frustrating when you're working with people who don't have this. You know, sometimes a person just really needs to take a good exhale. So I like to think about when I teach pranayama, I like to offer the example, you know, of think about moments when you have inspiration, right? No one exhales as they have a light bulb moment. I just really had that, right? It doesn't happen. We go, ooh, right? Inspiration, it's literally in the word, the in-breath. Similarly, right, when a stressful moment has just passed, when we feel the somatic quality that we know as release, it is always with an exhale. So what does pranayama do with that information? It starts to draw it out. Richard Freeman uses the analogy of kneading dough to these processes of yoga. Right? When you start, it's sort of like a dense mass, and then as you keep practicing, things start to become softer, more like flavor and essence of the material becomes available, and that something like that is happening in the body-mind when we practice. So the inhale becomes, we start to really see the way that the inhale is sort of the motor of thinking. Of course, we think also when we exhale. Perhaps a better way to say that is the movement of the breath itself is the motor. That doesn't mean you can't think when you hold your breath. In fact, that's a great way to focus the mind. That's one of the reasons we practice visualization during pranayama when we hold the breath, because it's like a way for, in a quieter space, the attention of the mind to become more refined. So we just kind of work the groove of focus during those pauses. And the beautiful thing about this poem, and you know, there's much more poem after the excerpt, but there is no resolution to this process. So the mind is going to keep doing wave formation. It is part of the nature of desire. It's not that we want to stop the movement of the waves. The analogy I like to use is we want to surf well, you know. We want to be able to find the right pockets of energy within the body-mind so that we can navigate skillfully. The problem is really when we lose ourselves in the churn. So the word that's coming to mind is centering. That when Agnes Martin is painting and when you and I are breathing, we are doing a process of clearing and centering. And from there, from the centered place, awareness is able to Yoga Sutra 1.3. Right? The seer is able to abide in its true nature. And the seer doesn't see stillness, you know. The seer sees the ocean. So let's try working with a little bit of sound now. I don't want to deprive you during the session of your toning practice. And what could be a more beautiful wave than a sound wave? Or maybe it is a good time to introduce. The Shruti box's name is Nada Naga or Naga Nada. I think right now they feel reversible. So these are two Sanskrit words. Nada is sound. It's not the only word for sound. Shruti is also a word for sound. In the Hatha Yoga tradition, there is an amazing word called Nadanusandhana. And that is the practice of using sound as the pathway into the state of yoga. Okay. So really beautiful, maybe in this context, that's just a reminder that there's a plethora, there's a spectrum of yoga practices, and you do not need all of them. You could choose to do a combination of them, or you could also be like, I'm going to really go down the rabbit hole of this technique. So should you ever find yourself in a place of, for example, chronic physical pain, where the asana practice is just not the thing, Nadanusandhana, move into the sound. So feel free to listen. Of course, I invite you to chant. So I'll do just a little guided practice here. Let's begin with the bottom of the wave, the lower sound vibrations. Low vibration gets such a bad rep in our current wellness world. The low vibrations are wonderful. So take a nice belly breath in, and then we'll produce the ooh sound. Ooh. Take the sound a little bit higher this time. And see if you can find one more perch higher. Position that will allow the sound to drop to whatever the bottom of your instrument is. Might be a different bottom than mine. So start somewhere in the higher registers and then just practice relaxing. Deep inhale. that lowest earthen place in the instrument. Sound. So let's find what's kind of the middle of your range, your tonal range. Should feel like it's a bright, warm sound. And we're going to think about this sound building around the energetic heart center at the center of the chest. Circulating waveform. The eh range, this is more of a throat range sound. Totally different sensation, that wave. Let's do one more. Let's go a little bit higher, more towards the roof of the mouth. So you could try to form this sound wave by producing an E sound. And then you can practice experimenting with moving your tongue back and forth or your lower jaw slightly up and down and see how that changes the curl of the wave. Full inhale. So notice now, having moved the waveform through different parts of the central channel, how we've used the sound to kind of circulate and help to move stuckness, notice how that allows for more of a fine flow of sensation in the body, in that central channel space. You might feel just a little bit more expansive, as though the body's gotten a little bit larger. It might feel like the membrane between the exposed skin and the air around you is a little more porous. Sukha, good space. And we'll close with just a little soothing chanting. Let's chant the sound of Om. We'll chant it, there are many ways to chant Om. We'll start the sound with the Ah sound, throat relaxed, and then we just slowly close the lips. During that process, you'll move through the O sound, and just enjoying the sound of Om for the length of your exhale. Let's do 5 rounds. Exhaling fully. Full inhale. Maybe you felt it just then, right as the sound stopped. Right? That quiet place. That's the place from which Agnes is writing.